Hi everyone, Dan Feller here, the Imagination Engineer. Welcome for another episode of Imagination IQ TV, where I bring in super duper uber awesome experts from around the globe, talking to you about the brain, talking about creativity, about other great awesome things. And they are so busy that their phone even rings. So today, taken away from his busy schedule and all his crazy calls that are coming through, I have this awesome guest. His name is Dr. Scott Mills, and he's also going to be gracing our presence at, and he's also going to be gracing our presence at, wow, I'm getting like nice little feedback here. So I'm having this great guy named Dr. Scott Mills. He's coming to Imagination IQ at the end of October, and he's going to be gracing our presence with his presence and his awesome tips and tricks about how to unlock your brain, unleash that awesome creativity, and really have the life that you're dreaming of. Not only just to step into it, but also to create it as you go. So great. I'm so happy that you're here, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm excited. And I can't, just so you know, you can't hear any feedback on this side. You sound great.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. I think I fixed it.
Oh, awesome. And I love hearing that I'm a super duper uber expert. I think that may be my new business card. So I'm just thrilled to get to talk to you a little bit today about imagination and creativity and how when we unleash that, it really can change people's lives. It's quite an extraordinary adventure that we've been playing on together.
Yeah, so tell us, people that are jumping on this call, some of my followers, they may not know who you are. So what started you on this path of being able to really want to get into the brain and unlock the secrets and mysteries there so people can actually use those assets up to their disposal? What started you on that?
Yeah, if I'm really honest, and my family would probably prefer I not say this, it's because my family was kind of nutty. And so I got interested very, very early in psychology. I still have the first hypnosis book I ever had. I got in 7th grade sitting on my shelf and was going around hypnotizing my friends. And I was trying to figure out how do these people work? I'd kind of felt a little bit like an alien dropped into this strange family and was going, all right, how does this all hang out? And then just fell in love with it. So 43 now, so it's been what, 25, almost 25 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. Went into doing my BA, my doctoral work, all in kind of this field of helping people and figuring out how people work. And it's been just continually one of those journeys that, when people think that they're an expert, and the true mark of an expert for me is that there's always new questions opening up. It's not that you have all the answers. And folks will be like, oh, that expert, they know everything. I keep thinking how extraordinary humans are and how much more is possible over and over again. And I'm just falling in love with it and continually kind of dive deeper.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad that you say that about it, learning more, because I think an expert really is about having better questions to ask. We asked a certain level of questions when we were starting out as beginners, and we got to intermediate, we got to advanced, and now expert. Well, we're still asking questions to learn more, but we're asking better questions. Is that right?
Yeah, and sometimes we're asking the exact same questions. It's one of my favorite things about the spiral. Sometimes we spiral back into these very, very simple questions. I was reading The Translucent Revolution today, which is just a phenomenal book if people have not picked that one up. Extraordinary look at the way more and more people across the planet are opening up into these higher conscious states and kind of having these samadhi experiences. And one of the things that the author talks about is how simple the question of who am I really? We're always asking this who am I question, then we make it more complicated and more complicated. And sometimes we get into these personal growth and how do I change myself? And he was talking about how often we can just come back to this simple question of who am I? Which I feel like is a question we're asking when we ask a question like, how do we get in touch with creativity? Sometimes it's just the very simplest parts of connecting into those creative parts of ourselves, getting out of our way. So I love both. I love the complexity and the simplicity that seem to be in constant dialogue.
Yeah, well, that's the polarity of it all. I mean, I talk about the law of polarity too. I mean, there's always this inertia going on. This cycle of energetic pull and gravitational thrust. It's just like going back and forth, and we do come back to a lot to that central location and those central questions, and asking the same questions again, except that we have a different motivation behind it. I think, I think we've learned certain levels of it, but it comes back to those questions. Yeah, great example. Thanks. So tell me more about, you had the family, you were doing the hypnosis and it got you engaged in this, but what made you decide that you were going to really engage this as a profession and a career and really wanting to help others do it too, or really unlock what's up in here?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm somebody who just had an innate sense of this is what I was supposed to be doing, and I don't know if I would say it's not been totally clear. Like, oh, I didn't know I wanted to be a professor. When I went and taught, I didn't know I would end up doing exactly what I'm doing now. But I've always had a pretty strong call to be in service. So initially, I went to seminary. Like, I was this 21-year-old kid in seminary. I'd been working at churches and working in other kind of institutions that were nonprofit, and just seeing the world through this lens of how can people's lives be better.
Mm-hmm.
Really the total focus of what I was into. And it was so funny to be in school, and I was on an interview the other day, we were talking about purpose, and I was noticing that, like, at 21, I was pretty clear where I wanted to be going, and I was in there with 40-year-olds often, who were like me now, sitting there, who were coming back and thinking about, like, oh, they had gone through a corporate career, they had done something else, and they'd stepped into this in a second life, which I just love. I actually love that people change direction so much. So I stepped into doing work in service, and I worked with homeless kids, and I worked with kind of the poorest of the poor, worked in all kinds of social work settings, and just got really clear at some point that it wasn't just about helping people get from what we say in psychology, kind of from the negative, so -10 up to neutral, which is a lot of what traditional psych did, a lot of what social work does, and I still think there's a big call for that. But I started to notice what would happen if we built on where people were extraordinary, where people had great strength, where there was a capacity for something bigger. And that just captured me about probably my mid-30s, some early 30s. Started researching. My dissertation was around spirituality of work and how people could step into purpose and really connect to what they're here for. And somehow accidentally became a coach after being a professor. And people now ask me what I am, and I get called like a brain wizard and a consultant. And so now I just find ways to make people's lives more extraordinary. And there's such a great joy in that experience when you watch somebody who has opened up to a bigger part of themselves. Like, you know this from all of the events you do. When you watch people from on stage or working one-on-one who have that aha experience, and not just the aha, but then they go, okay, so I've got the insight, but how do I translate this into something powerful and real in my life? And they go do it. It's like, whoa, I got to be a part of that. It's, I feel like, I'm an addict, and that's the best addiction you could ever have, is to, like, watching or being part of somebody else's amazing experience of life and my own.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. That actually gives a lot of context to your mission these days. It hasn't changed much, it sounds like. You've just changed the way you're expressing it, and changed the way you go about getting this massive change, or this development of the best version of you out there. So I'm loving it. I'm loving it. So what's happening right now, Scott? I mean, what are you most excited about, like right now, or within the next few months? I mean, what's on the horizon?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm in this great stage of expansion and opening, and I love that we're talking about creativity, because I've been in this generative creative explosion lately. So I think you've seen, and some of the people who are on the call have seen me being kind of a shit kicker, which I love doing, like rocking some boats and calling some things out in the industry. So one of the things I'm super excited about is finding ways for healers, and when I use the word healers, by the way, this is not just like doctors, chiropractors, coaches. It's anybody who's committed to making the world a better place to be. So I'm super excited about empowering those folks, including myself, to really create huge change in the consciousness of the planet. Like stepping into everything that's possible for them. And part of what I assume is that if we're going on this journey to handle some of the biggest challenges this planet's ever seen, part personally, and globally and planetarily, we've got to be pretty well prepared. We've got to actually be clear in ourselves. We can't be, what I call falling in love with our shadow. And I keep asking people time to break up with your shadow. It's time to really be present to the moment and actually explore all of the possibilities of your brain. I love to notice with people that we're behind the helm. We're at the helm of the Starship Enterprise, this brain we have capable of amazing, amazing things. And most people I meet still act like they're riding a tricycle. And so I hang out with people and I say, would you rather be at the helm of the Starship Enterprise or riding that tricycle? Because it's available for people right now. And so this is kind of my main passion, is to really equip people to have the extraordinary lives full of tools and capacities that I know are possible.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for imagination, I really harp on this. I mean, I call it like the joystick. It's the joystick to this life that you're driving. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The Starship Enterprise, perfect analogy there. So you talked about tools, like you teach these. Can you share like the number one tool that you see most people are not either using, activating, have no idea that it exists, that you help them realize?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's about 50 of them. So we won't do all of those. We'll do a little today. I'll do a lot when we come to this event, which is part of why I'm excited to be hanging out with you guys for 3 days. I want to start at the most basic. So I told you before the call, one of the things I've been playing with lately, it's particularly what are the levers for evolution? That's what I would call it. What are the levers to move people from kind of what I call an egoic self, or kind of a self-centered around defending my little piece of the world, into a much more expansive evolutionary self? So I've been looking for what are the ways we get from this place where we're relatively contracted, defended, that place when people's creativity shuts down, when they know there's something bigger for them, but they're afraid, into this place that says, okay, well, I'm going to step into fear. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to create a life that's really what I've been wanting to live. And one of the places I've been hanging out the most lately is in gratitude. Because part of what I've noticed is that when people don't accept the gifts they have in their life in this moment, it's actually fairly difficult for other gifts to show up, because we don't even notice them. Our attention is so focused on those negative things. So I've been looking at the movements of gratitude, really simple. Their presence, embracing the moment, which is much more complicated than it sounds, and then responding. So the first tool I would hang out with you guys in is just presence. Very, very simply, because this seems to be one of the biggest obstacles for people having the level of creativity, the level of insight, the level of courage that they want to have, right? We do this great thing. We think, okay, I'm either going to be in the past. We don't do this on purpose. Our brain's set up to do this in some really strange ways. But I'm either going to be in the past, I'm going to be thinking about all those things that I could have had, I did have, all those ways I was stupid, bad, not enough. Or sometimes all the ways things were really great and now they're not. Or we hang out in the future. We're thinking about all the things that we could have, would be great, or scary, like we want to avoid. And we miss this opportunity to be right in this moment. The moment that Louise Hay calls the present the point of power. It's the only place we have a chance to change anything. So one of the first tools I teach people is a really old Buddhist tool. It's a really simple tool. It's in the Gratitude Explosion that you guys can all have for free and play in. It's a really, I'm super excited. It's one of those things I was like, this is my birthday gift to the world. So the presence piece, one of the first exercises the Buddhists do is just simply to notice that whatever you're hooked into. So let's say I'm hooked into a particular emotion right now. If I'm a business person, which I am, I'm an entrepreneur as well at some level, and I need to make a call this week. I've got to make this big important call. And so I hook into all the fear, like what if I'm rejected? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if they're going with somebody else?
Right.
All that's going to stop me. So what I've been teaching people to do is very simple 5-step process. It's to first feel the feeling, because most of us are avoiding it, right? It's like, oh, well, I'll do anything but feel that fear. Let me go get a sandwich. Let me go, watch a movie. Let me do anything else but feel the feeling, mostly because we're afraid if we feel the feeling, we're going to get sucked into it like a black hole. It's not how our brains work. Our brains have a really short shelf life for emotion because they're biochemical reactions, so maybe 30 seconds. So that people just let yourself feel the feeling and then notice, second step, where it is in your body. Because it's always going to be localized. Nobody is an entire body of fear unless a bear is chasing you. But we think we are. We're never an entire body of anger. It's going to be one place or maybe a couple places in our body. Let some sort of color identify that. And these are actually some NLP tricks that we picked up, like dissociating and kind of shifting the experience. But let there be some kind of color, and then just simply breathe into that feeling for a good 30 seconds to 2 minutes. When you do that, the feeling will dissipate and you'll either notice there's something underneath it. So maybe if you start off with sadness, a lot of times, or anger, a lot of times anger is masking sadness or grief. So you might go, oh, that anger, and then you go, oh, I'm so sad. You go back to the process, you hang out in the same place. So you'll either notice an emotion underneath, or you'll feel completely clear and present in this moment, and the moment becomes available for creative insight, for new ideas, and it's one of the simplest processes ever. And people have been using it for thousands of years, and yet when I teach this tool, it's one of the first things I teach people. Folks are like, "Oh, that works?" And so we do it a couple times. Go, whoa, that works. That really does work. Very, very simple brain technique. I do a lot more complicated stuff, especially when we start playing with the inevitability work, which is this notion of bringing things in our brain that we have coded as impossible into a place that we code as inevitable. And the crazy thing is, it's literally what file cabinet you put it in your brain often. That work gets a little bit more complicated, but if you can't be present, it's actually hard to do that work. Yeah. So that's why I started in this place.
Amen to that. Yeah, those are some good things. I hope you guys who are watching this right now, you're the group that's on here, shoot, you should be writing that down. And if you didn't quite catch all those, make sure you watch the replay as well. Just to let you guys know, on the play page here, if you scroll down a little bit, there's a comments down there. If you've got questions or you've got comments or just want to have a shout out, we'd love to hear from you there. Just go and type in your comments down there, and I will see them. I'm looking at them right now. If they've got a question, I'll make sure we throw it into the mix so we can have Dr. Scott Mills be able to answer it for you with his uber awesomeness, right?
You can also comment on my hair. I just got it cut for you guys right before.
Wait, give us a profile. Give us a profile. Let's see.
It's got this little headband thing on it, but that's the other side. Yep. Just went and I was like, okay, I'm going to be on with Dan's people. I got to be looking good for you.
Looking styling. Okay. Well, thank you. We're just scratching the surface here, guys. And if you're wanting to hear more about this, make sure you go check out, Scott's website too. So Scott, what's your full website? Tell everybody your website.
Yeah, the website is scottwmills.com. It's really simple, SCOTTWMILLS.com. And if you want to do the gratitude explosion, just put a /full yes, FULLYES. It's really about, for me, saying a full yes to life and not holding ourselves back, which is, I think, why we're doing this work we're doing, is that so people fully step in. I was reading this quote from Byron Katie. I see it all the time. It keeps popping back up. But she says, you will lose if you fight reality, but only 100% of the time. I was just like, yeah, this is so true. Like, what would happen if we play the way that you and I are encouraging folks to do, in this way that's playing full out, kind of being completely in our bodies, stepping over fear or through it, and really seeing what could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about the whole, obviously we're talking about the imagination, with imagination IQ, and I talk a lot about the whole word imagination has become a bad word. It's been something that is deemed as childish or irrelevant, and ultimately has become the other cuss word, or the word we don't say. It's like the Voldemort word, the name we will not say, he who shall not be named. And we have to get back to this, that imagination is the key. It is your key to be able to unlock a lot of these things. That the whole presence you're talking about, or moving into that feeling. Yes, there's brain, technical, physical things going on, but there's also energetic stuff going on as well, and trauma from the past. Yeah, you know this better than most. And being able to turn that on, be able to give yourself permission once again to imagine, you're able to unlock a lot of these things and start giving yourself that, again, that domino effect of permission to have presence, and so on and so forth. You're actually opening your body, opening your mind back up to the greatness, to be able to really have a harvest of that, of what's been locked up inside of you for so long. And you're seeing this with it.
I love that little piece you just said, that it's become a bad word because it's associated with childishness. And I would love to just notice that it's childlikeness, that place. Like, if we remember, that's the place so many of us are trying to get back to.
Yes.
A place where we were young and everything was possible. Like, if you wanted the cookies from the shelf, there was nothing stopping you. You know, mom, dad went out. You were figuring out how you could put the boxes up and the chairs, and, you know, you'd swing from a rope to get those cookies if you wanted to, because there was nothing stopping you in this world of possibility that you were living in. So I love that when you talk about energetics, just that space of clarity and wide open field of possibility. Like,
the possibilities are endless, but most people get stuck in the thought of, like, I'm in the real world or the material world, but we're beings that are designed to bring things from ethereal to material. And when we stop that interaction and we're only trying to build a material, we start using resources that do not sustain the things that we're building. And this is a problem energetically as well as practically in the real world, quote unquote. And we have to get back to this process of understanding we're getting from the raw materials from the ether and being able to infuse them, what we have here physically, to create a material expression point, whether that's in your business or that's in your relationships or in your life. This is a translation tool. Imagination is that translation tool. And guess what is the conduit? The big radio dial. I mean, that's your brain. Holy moly. That's the dial on the radio dial, that is on the big radio, that is actually taking that transmission from the ether and being able to bring it out so everybody can listen and engage what you have to offer the world. So I'm so glad you are coming to Imagination IQ to help people really fine-tune this receiver device and transmitter device.
Yeah, you know, I want to say that I think this real world thing, it's such a funny concept, because the real world is always relative to the you know, what's around you. And my suspicion is that folks in the 1400s, 1300s, when folks were saying, hey guys, you know, I think the world might not be flat. I think that if we sail to the edge, we're not going to fall off, and that the sea monsters aren't going to eat us. There were, I'm sure, people saying, well, in the real world, the sea monsters will eat you and the world is flat. Anytime somebody says we live in the real world, it's the same as for when I hear people say truthfully or honestly. It's this way of limiting what's possible because someone is standing in a very limited perspective. It's almost never a sense of possibility. It's not useful. I don't find, when I work with corporate folks, I work with lots of CEOs and folks who are running their own businesses. Anytime they're saying in the real world, this is how it functions, I know that there's fear. There's some sort of internal limitation, and there's some block to imagination and possibility. So if you're hearing, like, if people are on the call are listening and hearing themselves say, oh, that's not how it works in the real world, because I know I hear this all the time, like, oh, it'd be great if people could live in this place of passion and excitement and have extraordinary lives, but that's not how things happen in the real world. It'd be great if we could have great relationships, honest and open, and, connect to our partners and adore them. But that's not how it happens in the real world. You grow up, you become an adult. I'm like, what a terrifying thing to say to people. It's amazing that any humans survive as we're telling those stories, where, instead we could imagine together that the real world becomes more and more expansive. And that we see more than a child sees, rather than we limit our focus more and more. So I love this. I think it's great if you're hearing people say, in the real world we do this, just ask yourself, where's the limitation in there? Where's the fear for them? And is there a way past it?
Right. And then I always go back and say, well, what creates the real world? And of course, we know that answer, but most of them like, well, it's basically they're recycling their garbage. They're recycling their garbage over and over again, and they're getting more garbage. And it's getting has less and less integrity over time. Therefore, they have more and more cracks and issues in their infrastructure for their life, for their business. And they're wondering why they keep having problems, or they keep having to put fingers in the dikes and hold back the water to the floods. It's like, you don't have to go that route. You can actually change that reality. Reality comes from a source. Reality is a symptom of what's going on within the brain, within the imagination centers, within your ability to translate the ether to this material world or this real world, whatever you want to call it. And most people, only want to stay in this real world, the thing they can see with their eyes or touch or taste or smell. And we forget that that's just a symptom. That is just the outcome of all the stuff that's happening behind the scenes in the manufacturing plant we call imagination, which is transmuted and translated through our brain, left and right. And I want to teach people at a high level how to be able to really retool this manufacturing plant that provides the raw materials for us to crank out better message, better us, better everything into this quote unquote physical space. So when we are bringing our message to the world, it is received. It's not looked like a sea of garbage. And I'm not trying to bag on any one person in particular that it's garbage, but we have been being taught over long periods of time that we're cranking out lots of garbage, and we're wondering why we keep having problems on the planet and in our lives and our businesses. And you probably have seen this with your clients too, Scott.
Yeah. So one of the things, so I probably am, as much as I'm a rabble rouser, I'm probably one of the most positive people I know. And part of that is because I'm convinced what's happening in what you're describing is that folks are associating into the very smallest parts of themselves. So what I like to have folks think about is you're living in a mansion. Your capacity is just expansive. And a lot of folks have chosen to hang out in the broom closet.
Mm-hmm.
They're just living in that little room under the stairs, kind of like Harry Potter was. And often it's our own choice, but we can start to begin to walk out of that broom closet, notice all of the possibilities around us, all the resources, and start to associate into the bigger parts of ourselves. Because what I notice folks doing, and there's probably people on the call who are in this place, I've been in this place in my life as well, where fear and anxiety and anticipation can get the better of me and other people, because it feels like, ooh, if I step out of this little safe space, some really crazy things might happen. We don't know what's going to happen. The broom closet's comfortable. This is a great place to be for now. So I just, with such a compassionate spirit, if people are finding this in themselves, I want them just to notice, first of all, notice the call inside of you. Because I actually don't believe anybody wants to stay in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sort of like there's something inside of you that is very clear, even if it's a still small voice, that there's something bigger. Humans seem to have reached for this for the entire history of humanity. Like, we're always reaching to the sky, to the stars, to some sort of connection. And yet we can drop into fear into this small space. So I just noticed, first of all, that if there's something bigger that's calling you, and that motivates you to step into something beyond just that tiny experience of life, and to have lots and lots of compassion for the part of you that has said no up until now. Because it's probably a little fearful part of you. If we can just start to notice, like, okay, that part of you that said no, it's got great intentions for you. It's trying to keep you safe. And yet this whole house is here waiting for you. So just a gentler way, not that what you're doing, I just always come at this from a very great place of compassion, because it's so easy to beat ourselves up for not having the life we think we should have had, where we think we should be.
It's probably the number one. It's probably the number one reason why, they stay there. I mean, you're saying about being safe, and totally get that. I was there for decades. I was in that broom closet, and when I finally realized that, there was the larger room or the larger house and the bigger world that was out there to my disposal. I mean, my world, or my real world, consisted of something that was something very small, and that kept me, in the broom closet, if you will. And I realized that I needed to change that. I needed to. You said about jump into the fear. I mean, I call it. It's not so much fear for me. I guess it's more like the uncertainty.
Hmm.
And so uncertainty could lead to fear for sure. And, I guess, I mean, I teach people too about like the fear. Fear is good. Just don't become afraid. And so afraid is a perpetuation of the fear where it keeps you locked down. So I say, that fear, jump at it, because that fear is actually your little guidepost telling you're telling you that you're on the right path, that you are going in the place that your body and your soul, your brain, your whole being is telling you, oh, there's some energetic resonance here. So go explore that some more.
So I
When
want
I'm
to give a little shameless plug for your event
sure,
here, because one of the things I've noticed, so when I talked about leverage points, one of them is community. And it's not just for the event, it's any event where you gather together with people who are stepping up the way that you're talking about.
hmm
There's actually, I experience an energetic field when I meet with a community. I watch people support each other, hold each other, be compassionate with each other, and really build a movement forward that sometimes can be pretty difficult on our own. So when I'm looking compassion, like you're saying, step into the fear, I can totally appreciate that, and I know that it's so much easier to step into fear or that uncertainty when you've got 2 or 3 people or 20 people or whatever
hmm
standing next to you and knowing you have somebody's got your back.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, that's one of the things of imagination IQ. We create an environment or an incubation chamber, or we can call it an experimental lab, where it's okay to play around. It's okay
Mhm.
to test things out, see how they work. Is it okay to go out into the next room from my broom closet? Yo, that was pretty okay. Maybe I can go and take the next step into the kitchen, into the whole house, outside in the backyard. And so Imagination IQ creates this environment, this sacred but also safe environment where you can play around with that in hypothetical mode, if you will, almost like beta testing your life, your experience, your business, etc. And then going, you know what, that was not too bad. And now I've already kind of programmed in my brain this experience that this is okay. Guess what's going to happen more likely, anyway, when you walk out of that event into real life? You are going to play those out. You're more likely to give it a try in the quote unquote real world. There's that term again. So
Yeah, and part of what that's doing, and this is something I teach people all the time, is that you're actually creating for the brain something we call a reference experience. So having, first of all, that place to come together. Anywhere I can get my folks into community, I'm super excited. Because what happens is your brain goes, oh, okay, that was possible there. And this is one of the ways I work with inevitability work. If we can find it anywhere in your system being possible and safe, it becomes easier to start making it safe everywhere in your system. So first of all, if you have a place like that where people can say, oh, okay, this is a place where it's okay to dream a little bit. It's okay to explore. I just tried out stretching out a little bit. The first thing that I love is then now we have a reference experience. And the second thing I want to point out here, if for any of you guys who are meditators, and I spent a year studying kind of postdoc and meditating regularly with folks, and I still kind of find myself in that circle, it's really different to go sit in a room full of experienced meditators than it is to sit at your house and try to meditate on your own. When I would do this, I would sit home, I try to close myself off, but I'd look around and I'd see, oh, look, I should maybe do the dishes, or the dog would come over and talk to me. But when I'd go and I'd sit in a room, and still to this day, when I go and sit in rooms with meditators who are more experienced than me, there's just a dropping into that space. And I can feel it in my body, and any experienced meditator you'll talk to can describe this phenomena. I think anytime we're creating a field of possibility with people like Dan, hopefully I'm one of these people. I've been doing this work for 20 something years. So
you are. I affirm you are.
I've been validated. And the other folks who this is our life's work, there's something about kind of holding that space for people who this may be a little bit of a stepping out point. And if you're along the journey further than somebody else who's sitting next to you, you help hold the container for them. So I think there's something extraordinary in coming together to play imaginatively and to let ourselves kind of open the brain, both for the purposes of just like we just can sync faster in that setting, and as well when we leave, not only do you probably have a few friends that you can connect to later, but your brain has a reference experience, which then makes everything I do easier to build on.
Well, we're basically cranking up the amperage, your of the frequency that we're doing at a live event, when we're doing community stuff like that, at a live event, etc. You're cranking up the amperage, the number of people who are becoming like-minded, doing a like-minded activity. It could be that, or something deeper like meditation, as you mentioned. We're cranking that up on an amperage level, and that's why it's easy to sink in really, really quickly. I love it.
And
so,
part of,
Scott,
I gotta say one more thing before you go, because
yeah.
I just gotta jump on my soapbox about this. So I'm one of the most outspoken critics about the way that events are run anywhere. This is something that people call me in to talk about, because part of my doctoral work was in education and spiritual formation. So I look at how you set up an event, and one of the things I just want to notice is, so I say, like, at events, this is possible. I don't think this is possible to every event. I don't think when I go to events where there's some guy standing up on stage who's playing guru and who's speaking at me, and we're all sitting like sheeple looking up at them like, oh, what are you going to teach us, how are you going to change our lives? That doesn't create the same kind of container that we're talking about, that meditation talk creates, because what creates that experience is everybody in the room stepping into their own experience, stepping into their own bodies, and creating a circuit of sorts. Being present to the experience, being available, and bringing all of who they are, not just going, oh, that expert. So I know none of us who are teaching on this weekend, our expectation isn't to stand up on the stage. Like, part of the reason I'm coming is because Matt Browning is coming, who is somebody I'm super excited by. He and I have very similar, even our messaging is similar. He talks about conscious evolution, brilliant guy. Some of the other folks that are there, we're all coming not just to like stand up on a stage and talk, but to learn from each other and play together. I personally know something extraordinary will happen for me just by being in the circle if I said not a word all weekend. So I got to point that out, because folks who are designing events and planning things, what you're doing is something different than what I've seen anybody else do. So I keep pointing to you and telling people, go look at what Dan Fowler's doing. This imagination IQ thing it's what we need to be doing.
Thank you, Scott. That was the mindset behind it, though, too. It was exactly everything you're saying. We wanted to have those kinds of outcomes, that circuit. I love that word that you just used, to create that, and you can't create it in the conventional event way. We needed something that was community driven, relational driven, and not just content fire hose driven or guru driven, or whatever you want to call it, sage on the stage. We wanted to make sure there was a connectivity that was what we do, what we say, what we hear, what we experience is a collective, not just this individual, take a few notes, hear a couple pundits up there, and then off we go on our merry way. Let's have some radical transformation and change in the moment, and it can happen. It really can when you orchestrate the event properly. So thank you for the plug on that. I appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm kind of interested. I'm kind of like excited to hear, maybe just a little taste of what you're gonna teach at Imagination IQ. Don't give it all away. I don't want you to give, but like maybe just a little taste, just to give people an insight.
Yeah, the piece, I've alluded to this already in the conversation a bit when I talked about inevitability and impossibility. One of the places that I'm probably doing some work that's different than anybody else I can find in the country is particularly around noticing how many of us have put what we most want on an internal timeline that's impossible. We all have these different internal timelines, and it's fascinating. Like, think about the things for listeners and for ourselves where we go, oh, when that thing happens, I'll be happy. But yeah, we keep sort of putting it off and putting it off. We have these things, and we can even listen for the way we say it. I'll give you a quick example. When something is inevitable, we say something like, I'm going to be on the call with Dan today. There's a depth to my voice. It's definite. It's happening. You can notice where that shows up in your body. It's normally got a location. Then we might say, if something's conditional, if Dan said, hey, will you be on the call with me? And I'd say, oh, I might make it. Like, I might be there on that call. We'll notice there's a different way that we have coded like what things that we're not sure are going to happen. Like if I say to Dan, oh, I might be able to make it, I'm pretty much sure he's going to be crazy to be sitting here waiting for me at 4:00. Maybe I'll make it. You know, it's kind of a crapshoot, but he's probably got better things to do with his time. Now think about people who say, I'd really like to spend more time with my family. Now you can even hear inside of that the but, that reason why it can't happen. I'd really like to spend more time meditating, but I just don't have enough time. I'd really like to spend more time with my family, but I hate those people. You know, whatever it is that people are saying. So we have these three really distinct timelines in our brains that so many of us, this is one of the things when I teach this at conferences, I just taught one of the top coaches in the country, I taught all of his staff this tool, and they were shocked. They're like, holy crap. They found the places in their bodies. They went, oh, I'm keeping things conditional or impossible for me. These things they really wanted, whether it be relationship, whether it was a certain amount of money, was a certain kind of business. So we notice where that is. And then what I'm going to be teaching people for a good part of the time I have with you is how do you move things? Because it's actually just the way the brain codes it. It's kind of like it's accidentally been placed in the wrong folder.
I love that.
And often it's been kept, placed there in the same reason that we were talking about earlier, this sense of like, ooh, it's uncertain. There's some fear. I don't know what's going to happen. So the brain has coded things that we most want as dangerous. Now, when you code things as dangerous, they don't show up on your inevitable timeline. So I'll be teaching folks things. So these things that have been impossible for them, really think about those things you keep wanting but don't seem to show up no matter how much work you do, to move those over onto the inevitable timeline. So your entire system is set up to move forward and get what you want.
Nice. I love how that so interacts with what I teach about imagination being the operating system of the universe. It is that place where I can manipulate data, images, etc. in the mind, put it into folders. And a lot of the times my imagination can run against me, and it does. But we've got this thing that is impossible or dangerous, etc. And you're being able to unlock those folders and let's put them in a folder that's right there on the desktop, that's easy access, that is ready to be used at a moment's push or a click of a button.
Yeah, and part of what's extraordinary, and this fits so well with this imagination piece that you guys are playing with, is that what I notice is when something's dangerous, our imagination is going to come up with ways to keep us away from it. But as soon as we make it safe, as soon as we put it on that inevitable timeline, then all of the imagination, all this extraordinary brain power that we have that is just, we have this problem-solving brain that's unparalleled. All of a sudden, all of that energy goes into how do I creatively get to this place that somebody wants to get to? So all of the tools that you teach to unlock the imagination then actually get to be so much more useful because there's nothing in their way. It's like, come on, we got the horses, we're ready to go.
I love that. That's it, guys. If you haven't figured out, that's why Scott and I really like our work. I like him as a person too, but man, our works we're like cousins, and we're kind of feeding off of each other here. I mean, I'm loving it, and I'm so excited about getting deeper into the whole inevitability timeline. That's going to blow people's minds, and it's going to put it in context to a lot of the stuff that we teach with the 6 steps to manifest on demand through the Imagination IQ event. So I'm really stoked. That's going to be so freaking awesome. So Scott, tell a bit people about how they can come and join you and I and a whole bunch of awesome other people at Imagination IQ.
Yeah, so I think that people, I'm not looking at the same screen that folks are looking at, but I think it's right below us. You should. It
is. On the plate, those the 40 plus people that are here on the call with us today. If you got any questions though too, please type them in. But if you scroll down on the page a bit below the video player, there's a link there. It's a big red button that says register now, and there's Scott's code right there. Normally, our general admission tickets are $497, but with his special code, you're gonna get $400 off. So it's only $97.
And
Nice of
that's
him to do.
$400 you have to buy me a gift for when you come to the event. You can be as imaginative and creative as you like.
Yes, yes, and you can tip me too if you want.
That's right.
That's
It's,
right.
I have to say, so I want to draw a distinction because I've been to a ton of events and I don't do a lot of events anymore. I speak for people on calls. But I don't go and speak to any kind of sales event. Part of what I love about what Dan's created is this is not another flippin' sales event where like I'm not allowed. This is the deal, just so you guys know. I'm not standing up on stage and saying buy my shit, right? None of us are going to be doing that. It's not what this weekend is about. The expectation for all of us that are here, and it's the reason we're here, is because I think all of us are tired of giving people kind of incomplete information where it's like, well, here's a little bit. Like when I say I'm going to do this inevitability work, I'm going to give you the process that I teach my clients. You're going to have something you can take home and you can practice. It's not like, hey, buy my whole program and then like you'll get it 6 months from now.
Right.
This is an event for you to have actual transformation during the weekend. It's $97 is nuts to come and do this. I don't know how Dan's making any money. At some point, he's going to have to explain this to me. So this is part of why I'm really passionate about this event, because I don't want to come and listen to other people's sales pitches. I'm not coming with a sales pitch. I'm coming with actual stuff that I do if you'd come to a retreat with me. It's a great way for you to get to know me a little better. And I love getting to meet the people who are coming just to play.
Yeah.
So,
and just to let you know, guys, that Scott, I am going to pull out of Scott. We're going to have an interview with Scott right after he speaks too. I'm going to sit down with him in front of everybody, and I'm going to start asking him questions about, well, what's next? Because if something that Scott does or says or teaches you during his time, and you want to take it to the next level, well, we want to make sure that there's an opportunity to be able to do that. Obviously, I mean, that's why we're getting together here. If it's energetically resonant with you, if it's the right move for you, if it's relevant, and if it is, then you should be able to take the next step. And I want to make sure I shed some light on what Scott's next step is for you guys, so we can get you along those paths. And of course, I'm going to do that with all the other speakers, and I'll share, their next steps with them, and we're going to talk about that right in front of you. We're going to share next steps for us with Imagination IQ too. But it's not the typical, we call it the pitch fest, up there and this price only. I got sick and tired of that too, Scott. And I wanted to do something different, being able to be more authentic, but also more integrity when it comes to sharing what the next step is. And the next step is not to fill in the gaps of what I didn't give you. It's to take you to the next level from the awesomeness that I just gave you, this 110% I just gave you. Now we got even more. Right?
Yeah, I love that. So of course, there's ways to work with me more. There's ways to work with all of us more.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's not to be like, oh, you never can work with us again. It's like, haha, we gave you part of it. Hee hee. No, but I have to say, like, I'm coming for the other speakers. I'm awesome. I know that. But Matt Browning and some of the other people that are there, and Dan, I'm looking forward to learning from you guys. And I hope folks will come and sit with me and hang out. And the other thing, I want to point out one other difference. Like some of the stuff you do, I get super excited about. Normally, if I go to an event and I speak, like I might be on stage for an hour and then I disappear. And I've been to some of these events where like the speakers are amazing. I was at Industry Experts Association a year or so ago. All the speakers were behind the screen in a green room. You could never talk to them. They were hidden away. This is an event where the speakers are here all 3 days. We're hanging out together. It's not like you can't ask a question the next day if one comes up. Mm-hmm. Don't stalk me back to my room, and ask me like late at night, rapping on my door. But like, you get to play with us for 3 days, which I'm super excited about because I get to do the same thing. I'm sure I'm going to have to be writing down questions for Dan and going, hey, Dan, what about this?
Yeah. We want to make sure, there was the last time we did Imagination IQ, I had a lot of people come up to me and said, it was so great that I realized that the person I was sitting next to for 2 days, they got up and then they spoke. I had no idea that they were a speaker. And it was like, oh, well, see, that's the whole point. It's like there is no like sage on the stage. I'm above you or you're below me, and I'm here to teach you awesome things, and I'm the guru. It's like we're all at this level. We all have something to contribute. We all have strengths, awesome strengths, and Scott talks about this too. And we're bringing those, including the people that are the attendees. They're bringing their strengths too. They're helping hold that container. I mean, this doesn't work without us all being in community and collecting a collective community like this. So yeah, it's fun. It's going to be
Although
good.
there is a sage on the stage. His name is Sage Lee. He's a friend
There's
of mine.
two. There's actually two. There's going to be two sages. Look at that. We have
I love it.
we have a Sage Lee and we have a Sage Taylor Goddard. One's a female, one's a male. It's like, I'm bringing all the sages. How about that? And Scott, I'm just going to give you the honorary middle name of Sage. So Scott Sage Mills. And let's just be done with it.
I love it. I got to tell you one little funny story before we sign off. You're saying like people notice like after 2 days they're sitting next to somebody who's a speaker. When I first started teaching, I was this scrawny little person that I still am. I'm like 5'6", and people didn't know I was a professor. So one of my favorite games to play would be to sit in a desk in the classroom while other students were, while the students were filing in, and I just had my little books, and I had my stuff somewhere else. And then once the class started, I would get up and walk up to the front of the room and start to teach. And it was, for me, like just a hoot, because I got to play and be kind of part of the group for a while. It's probably why I'm attracted to this.
Blew their minds.
They were like, wait. Yeah, it was really fun. You'd hear people whisper in the hall as I walked by, that guy's our teacher. Is he old enough to be here? Is that Doogie Howser? A lot of fun. I just love this sense of playfulness and the spirit of imagination being unleashed.
And if you guys that are on this call right now, you're looking forward to having an experience. We call it an epic event experience because it is. There's nothing short of experience. Live music, comfy couches, we sit in the round, there are no stages. We create an environment that is conducive for high-level learning and deep understanding of spiritual and neurological principles. And so you can actually not only retool your brain to be able to reprogram, but also take those things out into the real world and have the transformation begin at the event and then transcend into your life after the event. So Dan, if you scroll on the page there's the Register Now button. And it's for October 29 through 31 in Sacramento. Scott's going to be there. I'm going to be there. Several other people are going to be there sharing our awesomeness with you. Scott Mills is all one word is the discount code. You actually get $400 off the regular price tickets. And this also takes off $400 for VIP. I only have a handful of VIP left. This gives you lunches all 3 days. This gives you the ability to have a dream seat with me on stage, which is like a hot seat. And there's a lot of other things on there too. Check out the page. It lists all of them. That's all the things, the cool things you get with the VIP. And Scott Mills discount code is actually $400 off of that as well.
Wow,
so
cool.
It's either $97 for general admission or it's $297 for the VIP. And the same code applies. So you choose which one you want. We have lots of VIPs. We're about half the room now. I'd say maybe a third of the room. Let's be honest, and I'm guessing about half of the people there are going to go VIP just because of the extra contact you get with speakers, extra contact you get with me and my team and my staff, and it's going to be a good old time. So we get to have some good food together. Always good to break bread. So Scott, thank you so much. Guys, if you are just if you're wondering if this event is right for you, reach out to myself, reach out to Scott, ask your questions directly. We would love to answer those. So here's up on the screen, Scott Mills. Use that tag there. It's on the page as well, or you can go to imaginationIQ.com. Here's the website and see more about the event, watch videos, testimonials. You got it. Scott, thank you so much for spending your time with me this afternoon. I've had a blast.
Absolutely. Always fun to hang out with you, Dan. Looking forward to seeing you in October.
Absolutely, guys. Take care. We'll talk to you soon on Imagination IQ TV. Until then, blessings to y'all.